This is the show that helps you know what to quit, what to keep, and what to question. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the QuitCast. My name is Becca. We are going to be talking today about making it rain, energy pennies. And behind me, you will see a tiny part of the topic that we are going to discuss today, which is my own personal experience making it rain with Animal Crossings and with a group of people who also love to play it. But that's not the only thing we're going to talk about today, because of course I want to talk about the recovery process as well, and why we want to make it rain energy pennies as much as possible when we are doing specifically burnout recovery. We've talked a little bit about the process of identifying where you are when it's time for recovery to start. We've talked a little bit about the systemic causes and why it's important to notice those and stop those. We're going to talk in the future about support, about getting support as well. But today I want to talk specifically about the quality of the energy pennies that we get. And I'm hopeful that this will help not only those of us who are in burnout recovery, but also just a quality of energy pennies experience, period. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to interview a couple of people who have been using Animal Crossing specifically to make rain energy pennies on their experience. Not both of them were not in burnout, but we're going to talk about making it rain energy pennies for ourselves, and specifically which strengths from the Clifton strengths were influenced in our process of using Animal Crossings and why we like it. So even if you don't like ACNH, as we're calling it, Animal Crossing's New Horizons, you will hopefully be able to still get something out of this video by listening to us talk about the quality of the energy pennies that we're getting. And whether we're talking not drain, which we will discuss. So we want to discuss not draining exercises, and then making it rain exercises for energy pennies. So those are the two goals for today. And we're just using Animal Crossings to talk about it because we all three happened to be doing that together. And it was one of the things that made it rain energy pennies for me. So when I say making it rain energy pennies, the reason I specifically use that phrase is because for everyone there exists an activity that you do that makes not only the drain go away. So that is a really important part of the making it rain part, because you can just stop drains of energy pennies and that will alone help the energy to recover. That's what we do, by the way, when we go to sleep. Specifically, is we stop the drains from happening and then we make it rain. And so the first piece, the stopping the drains, is we talked a little bit last week about each individual thing that you do, each decision you make, each time you choose between whether or not to make a decision. Every single thing that you do either drains or adds something to your life. And so when we have those experiences where we can sense that we're being drained of our energy just by participating in them, as much as possible, unless those are necessary for survival things, we want to try to do less of those things, especially when we're in burnout recovery, and in general when we're in pandemic fatigue, and then just also in general when we're in life. So plugging the drains is the first super important part. And what that often means, and what you'll hear us talk about a little bit when we get into Animal Crossing's New Horizons discussion in a minute, is that all of us plugged a drain in our life by replacing one activity that we were doing with Animal Crossings. And specifically for all three of us, it happened to be social media use. And essentially we pulled almost all of our social media use back, all three of us at different times in the interview. We pulled our energy use, our social media use back, and that plugged a drain that was happening that we weren't even aware was happening. So that's the first important piece, is that often the making it rain feeling can only happen because we have plugged a major drain. So for some of us, watching the news, being on social media, et cetera, all of those things are actually draining energy pennies from us on such a significant level that we're not even aware of it. For some of us, we have toxic relationships that we're in or people that we are around that are draining us on such a significant level. And so on some level, when you do something like Animal Crossings, which I play on like a physical device, usually that I have to look at the screen, I'm cutting out an awful lot of what's going on around me if I choose to, because sometimes I can multitask, but if I choose to, I can cut out a lot of what's going on around me and plug some drains in that way by taking my focus off of other things and putting it onto this switch. There are other ways, of course, to plug drains. And so I want you to think about, as you're listening to us talk and as you're listening to me talk about plugging drains, think about the activities that feel draining to you when you are done with them. And some of them are going to be things you won't expect. So usually what we do in our Write Better Faster class is we ask people to keep track throughout the whole week or to take 3 or 4 days and keep track of everything that you're doing and put a little smiley face or a frowny face or some kind of emoji next to it so that every single activity that you've just done gives you a sense of that made me happy, that made me sad, that was hard, that was frustrating. And this is not going to be for those of you who really get upset when I'm like, do what you love, do play to your strengths. We're not just going to say, don't ever do anything that is hard for you or don't ever do anything you don't like, because that's not realistic. But there's a huge difference between this thing is necessary for me, I have to do it, and it's awful, and I'm going to do it as quickly as possible, versus this thing is really not necessary for me. And also, I don't like it. And also, it drains me really fast. Those are the things we want to try and get rid of as quickly as possible. And that's the plugging of the drain often that happens when we burn out. It happens a little bit naturally. We stop doing certain things that have been draining us because we just don't have the energy for them at the time. And so I want you to look, if all you do right now and you stop and don't watch the rest of the video, that's fine. I will not be mad about that. But if all you do is do the evaluation exercise where you go through and look at everything that you have done throughout the day today, or even just for the last few hours or the last few days, and you give yourself a rating about whether or not it makes you feel better or it makes you feel worse, and just do that energy penny evaluation of like, did it add pennies to my life or did it subtract them? I personally like using the emojis because I think that it's pretty helpful to have the like range of emotion rather than just adding and subtracting, because sometimes things that make me frustrated, like doing my taxes, actually give me a ton of pennies when they're finished, not in the middle of them, but when they're done. And so I might actually feel happy when I'm finished with my taxes, even though it was, difficult to get done. Like it was not something that I would choose to do if I had a choice. But I don't have a choice. And so it makes me happy when I'm finished. So I might put a smiley face on that, or I might put a frowny face if I didn't like it, but it might actually give me pennies. So there may be multiple forms of evaluation, but I highly recommend that you yourself do this. We get so many questions about what makes energy pennies. And almost always the first question that I ask back, because I rarely answer that question, because I don't have enough information to answer the question, not because there isn't an answer, but because there isn't a set of things that make energy pennies for every single person. It's different for everyone. It depends, right? And those of you who are playing the It Depends drinking game, go ahead and drink at that one, because that would be my answer. If you ask me what makes energy pennies or what makes it rain for me, I'm going to give you some criteria, hopefully, especially at the end of the video, to use for how to judge whether something makes it rain or not. But the first important piece is identifying the drains and trying to get rid of those. Because if you don't plug those drains, you can make all the energy pennies in the world and it's not going to help, because you're still draining at a higher level than you're making the pennies. So plug the drains first. That's job number one. The second part is, when you make it rain energy pennies, like this is something that I wish that we would all collectively do more of. So there is so much pressure on people right now to be really effective and efficient and to be so productive and to get as much out of this industry as we can. And I'm not saying it's not important to be productive. I enjoy being productive as well and efficient. But when that becomes the only metric that you use, if you decide whether or not to do something at all times based only on whether or not it pushes you forward in your productivity, then you are literally missing out on things that would make you more productive because they don't appear to make you more productive. So just as a for instance, video games, I always use as an example of something that doesn't feel productive, but often can be extremely productive, especially for writers. So we have this, let's call it procrastination activity. And I hate that word because so rarely is procrastination actually something you shouldn't be doing. There's so much procrastination behavior that's really your brain saying, you are trying too hard. You have to put some tasks back. We need a break, sister. Like so often that's what's happening with your brain when you're procrastinating is it's just overwhelmed with all the pressure and it needs some time when there's no pressure on it. And that's really part of why I suggest things like walking and biking and running and taking a shower, do the dishes, play a video game, do something other than trying to be productive, because sometimes the forced productivity makes us less productive and less effective and less efficient because we're trying so hard to get every molecule of water out of our sponge of productivity. And we don't realize that the sponge is dry and it needs to be filled. And so there are so many things that we do that don't contribute directly or don't appear to contribute directly to our productivity, but that make the system healthy, the system of our life healthy. So the combination of parts that makes up everything that produces our life is a system. Every single thing you do, every person you talk to, everything you inhale, every decision you make is part of that system. And that system has an internal inertia. And I don't mean inertness, I mean inertia, the forward motion of something that is at motion and will stay in motion unless enacted upon by an outside force. That's the type of inertia I mean here. Everything that makes up your system has an inertia together. And when you try to only get every molecule of water out of that productivity, you are essentially slowing the system down and making it not function as well because it doesn't have the food that it needs to continue. And so many of the things that we do that are not, quote, productive are the things that actually make our productivity possible. And so we just want to be cautious when we're trying so hard to be so productive that we're not doing something that will make us burn out. And that's why a lot of you are here in this series, right? Is because we're talking about burnout recovery and about what happens when you squeeze too much water out of the sponge and it doesn't have anything left. You can't get any more water from the sponge. So anyway, the reason I talk about it in this way, particularly in using metaphors, is that when I try to explain it clinically, I think it comes across not sounding as accurate, or it comes across sounding more dry or unrelatable. And so using metaphors is the easiest way for me to help you understand. So basically, that's why we use energy pennies, because if you give a penny, take a penny, that is just like currency. And we all understand that. So the things that also give us pennies back, those are the types of things that are just about plugging the drain. So if I'm doing a writing and it's giving me a few pennies, but it's also taking me a few pennies, then that falls into a plugging the drain category in terms of like, that is not probably going to be a make it rain. When it costs me a lot of pennies to do and also gives me a lot of pennies, that's probably not making it rain. The making it rain places are where it costs me very few pennies to do, but the reward is so significant that it is very disproportionate. Like the benefit to us is disproportionate to the expense when it comes to energy pennies. But so now we want to talk a little bit more about the make it rain places, specifically because there are three of us I've interviewed two other authors. So there are three of us here who are going to talk a little bit about the reason that we believe that Animal Crossings has the potential to be a make it rain activity for so many people, not just for us, although it has been for us, but we see this in the YouTube stratosphere of all of the Animal Crossings people around the world who are making content. The language that they're using is very make it rain territory. So some of you are going to have make it rain in other places. You don't need Animal Crossings for that, and that's fine. We're not trying to convince anyone to do Animal Crossings. Although if you already do it, we definitely want to know about it, because we're forming a little community on the Becca Nation BFA Patreon, so that we can all kind of do it together and have a good time doing that. The other piece about this interview in particular is that we're going to talk about strengths as it relates to why I have a particular making it rain or just a positive energy penny experience. And so we're going to talk about very specific strengths in that video, and I want you all to see that. The interview is way too long. We're not going to post the full interview here on the QuitCast on the YouTube video. I'm going to pull out the excerpted parts that I want to talk the most about. And then I'm going to post the full video on the Patreon so that any of you who want to see it will be able to see it. And so if you go to patreon.com/BeccaSyme, that'll be over there if you want to see the rest of the interview. We'll also post it on the Discord in the Animal Crossing segment. So what to look out for? Well, two things first. If you are watching right now and you are not into Animal Crossings, you can skip ahead to where you see me in this green again. And I'm going to give you some information about the next couple of videos. And also we are going to run a contest on this channel, just this channel, the QuitCast YouTube channel. We're going to run a contest to give away a Switch. And specifically, I'm going to do it, and I'll explain more about it at the very end, but specifically, I want to do it just on this video because I want you to watch this and I want you to listen to what makes and takes energy pennies for you. I want you to listen for the language and start to evaluate that yourself. What gives you energy pennies? What takes it away? And then specifically, if you have a drain that you identify, how can I plug that drain? And if you have a make it rain experience, how can I do more of that right now, especially if I'm in burnout recovery or in pandemic fatigue, or if I'm having seasonal depression or anything like that? How can I just give myself a better shot at having a good day? All right. So here, without further ado, is the excerpt from the interview. And then please stick around at the end. I have a couple more things to say about energy pennies, making it rain. And then we're going to end with the information about the contest. So please stick around. We'll be right back. I am here today with two of my very favorite people on the planet who also happen to share my love for Animal Crossing's New Horizon. I might name it obsession, like it might be obsession level for me. Yeah, that's very possible. In a good way, in a healthy, a healthy way that has helped me to recover from burnout, which of course we've talked about ad nauseum. We're not going to talk a ton about burnout recovery today intentionally, other than we're talking about making it rain energy pennies. So the first thing I want to do is introduce Krystal and Jillian and have them tell you about their strengths, because we are going to talk about strengths in particular. So Krystal, what are your top 5, 7,
my top strength, context right here, don't make me repeat myself, said history. I'm number 1, context, and then learner, deliberative, empathy, and strategic are my top 5. And then my brain is too full. And
relator, achiever,
individualization, relator, responsibility, ideation, achiever, analytical, intellection, and activator.
Yeah, Jill, how about you?
So I'm number 1, empathy, and I feel like that rules the roost. Then intellection, input, adaptability, restorative, and then strategic and achiever right there together.
For me, it's about what's dominant, because I think when we're going to talk about, for instance, like a high restorative, one of the things that makes energy pennies for high restoratives in Animal Crossing specifically
Yeah.
is the way that you can fix discrete problems. Like when you have a problem,
Yeah.
it has a solution and it's discrete, like it has a beginning and an end, right? So like you're getting energy pennies from so many places
Yeah.
when you're doing this, right? You can make energy pennies in other ways besides this, but I'm hoping that part of what you're going to hear by hearing us talk about what we love about this, which of course over my shoulder is the entrance to my original island, the Winter Wonderland island that many of you have visited because I have released the dream address. But particularly Animal Crossings makes energy pennies for us, but if it doesn't make energy pennies for you, you can learn what makes energy pennies and then apply that to other places. So like when we talk to Jill, like what is your favorite thing about Animal Crossings?
I feel like I need to talk about how I got started in it, because I feel like you're going to hear my top 5 strengths throughout my intro of this video game.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Okay, so first of all, I have never played video games in my entire life. I'm 42 years old, have 2 grown children, never played. My husband and both of my sons have been gamers their entire lives. And 2020 rolled around and brought all of the things that it brought us. And I was really struggling, I mean, I'm number 1 empathy. I felt the world hurting. I can still feel that. Yeah. And I think I kind of became obsessed with, you know, what was on the news, and I would become more and more despondent. And I have to say, Becca told me 455,000 times to get off of social media, and I didn't, and that is my fault.
Learning curve. It's a learning curve.
But my husband, who is always like the best, just the best, came to me and he said, "Hey, Nintendo has this new game out, and it's an island, and you can do anything you want it, and nothing bad ever happens. Aww. And I think that it might help you." And he gave me his Switch and gave me the game, and he said, "Just try it." And I'm thinking like, well, hey, that's so sweet, but I don't know how to video game. But in an effort, because he was so worried and I was so depressed, I opened the game and started. And I mean, it in like 2 days time, I think I had logged like probably 15 hours because it was a world I controlled. It's very similar to what I love about writing, right? I control the emotions of that world so they don't overwhelm me, because the real world was very overwhelming. But then I began to notice that it was affecting all of my other strengths as well. My intellection would intellect, as I call it, while I was playing. Yeah. You know, I could take all the weeds off of my island, and my restorative was getting energy pennies from that. There is nothing you can do in New Horizons that you can't undo. And I think that is a huge thing for me as a high restorative who wants to fix everything. Like the knowledge that I can't really make a mistake. I can always redo it. And then my achiever kicked in as I began to find new recipes and build things and do all of this and learn more about it. And it just really began to feed all of my top 10 strengths. And I still love it. 2 years later, I still love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I just want to point out a few things of what you said. There was a drain that was happening that was significant to one particular, and happened to be your number 1 and also your high input as well, right? So like it was draining both of those things.
Drain, yes.
It was draining your restorative because you couldn't fix the problem, right? Like so many people are like, oh my gosh, it's me. This is what I did. And I think the reason that it's so important to acknowledge that type of patterning is because, yeah, maybe we won't ever have March of 2020 again. Like maybe we won't. But we have March of 2020 on very small levels over and over again, where things are draining you. You are not able to fix it. You can't stop what's happening. There's no control. And so you need something. And for some people in that moment, it might be something other than Animal Crossings, but I can't tell you the number of people who have been helped in the pandemic by being able to have this type of game. And it isn't just ACNH, but this is the one, of course, I got obsessed with. So,
well, and I mean, so many people have a similar story to mine in that they had never gamed before and they decided to try this out because of the situation around them. And, you know, Nintendo has reaped the benefits. But it truly, truly is so restorative.
And it may not be Animal Crossings that you fall in love with, because people have similar experiences with tons of other games. I mean, there's a reason that Farmville sold for $7 billion, right? Like, it provides that discrete ability to control the environment and work out the things or gamify the things that you can't gamify in real life. Like, it is super, super huge. And the other piece I want to, like, because I just think it's so important to say, when we're thinking about making it rain energy pennies, we have to keep the drains from happening as often as possible. So if you're identifying something like Jill did, that's like, this is draining you, this is draining you, this is draining you. You can't just sit there and let the drain happen and not do anything about it. And sometimes just escaping into like a fantasy world for a couple of hours is enough to just pause the drain enough that even if it doesn't make pennies in terms of like, it's not fixing the problems that are in the real world, but it's helping me to cope better. Like, coping is the best. I highly recommend it. Krystal, what about you? How did you kind of get into Animal Crossings? I mean, obviously, like, you guys have Switches, you're gamers.
So I prefer like the slow kind of SimCity, Sims, you know, strategy. I like the strategy. I had played Animal Crossing when the kids got a Switch a couple years ago. And I played it a little bit and I was like, oh, this is so cute. You can bebop around and, you know, do some stuff and pick your apples and clean off the weeds. I'm like, oh, that's adorable. I didn't really get the point of it. At that point, I didn't play enough.
Because in the game, they tell you that's what the point is. They're like, you want to get to this level where KK shows up. And then these are all the steps you have to take to get there. But that's not actually
the point of the game.
The point of the game. Like,
okay, you know, and that's fine. So I kind of walked away from it and I never touched it again until Becca started playing. And then Becca was like, this is the best thing in the world. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really? You're over there picking apples and cleaning weeds off? And, you know, like, what?
Oh, no. Really? Oh, my sweet summer child.
And so, like, but I didn't know. And then we talked about it more. And then I spent the weekend with you. And I was like, I'm sorry. Nobody told me that this game could do all these things and had all of this stuff. And I was like, it was a bebop and little animals walking around on the island. And so I was just floored because my creative brain kind of went, give me 1 second while I think about this. And now I'm like, okay, so I need to figure out how to make my own wallpaper and figure out how to make my own paths. And I'm going to have to work on these simple panels. And what else can I figure out how to make? Because they say that I can customize this other stuff. And yeah, so now, thank you, Becca. Yes. I also generate energy pennies by running around my island, building cliffs and demolishing things, which is fun. Oh, the other thing that really got me charged was she told me about all these YouTubers that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like subscribing to these YouTube people and following them on Instagram and looking up their codes and being
like input learners pay attention, right?
Oh,
like,
yes. That is a game changer. Like the amount of content.
I'm a number 2 learner. I don't have as
Yeah.
much input, but the learner in me was like,
The learner, either learner or input, the amount of pennies you can generate by learning how to do the next level and the next level
Yes.
things, right? So there's kind of this, like Krystal was talking about, the initial sort of, you know, learning how
because
to
in my
build things and
head,
cut wood and all that stuff.
yeah,
That's a
in my
very
head, it
different part of the
changed
game. Yes.
from the little animal bebopping around doing something
Mhm.
to a world generator
That you build. Yes.
Yeah.
that you
And this is
build.
part of,
And I was like,
writers pay attention to this, right? Because what
Mhm.
I'm doing, what Krystal's doing, what I'm trying to convince Jillian to do as well, which I think she's almost on board. This video may stick her over the edge.
well, we'll
see.
keep poking her until
Yeah,
she
we'll keep
changes
poking at her. Is to build your world. Like
Mhm.
I built my world. Krystal's building her world, right? Like,
Yeah.
so when Sarah McLean had done this release party, like a launch party, where she invited people to her island, and I didn't participate in it at the time because I wasn't into ACNH yet, but I'd heard about it and I'm like, that's so cool. But I had no idea really what that meant because I hadn't played. But once I started playing and saw the capacity to build, but also this is what I love about it the most, you're building within restrictions. You can't just build whatever you want in terms of like, you have to figure out how to make the things that you have build what you want to build.
And
Instead of
strategic
being
really
like,
that.
oh my gosh, my arranger just goes crazy. Like,
Yes.
so my most dominant executing strength is arranger. And so, and this is part of what I wanted to talk about as well. Like each of us is making pennies in a slightly different way, right? Like the strategic definitely likes the, how do we get this to happen and build it on this way?
My first executing is deliberative, and she adores this. She's like,
Yes.
oh, look what we got. We moved a little, we did a little,
One
we did
step
a
at a
little,
time,
we did a
right?
little. Oh, we're gonna do
Yep.
this. Now we got to learn this, and then I can do this.
Well, and it helps with like activators, because once you get to that level where you can design stuff, like you can take action as soon as you have the idea, and it doesn't like you, it doesn't hurt the progress that you've made in other places to run over to a different part of your island and just start building this other thing. Right? Like, so you can make tons of activator energy pennies. We talk a lot about achiever energy pennies in Animal Crossings. And again, my hope is as you're listening to us talk about this, you can hear, oh, achievers make pennies by discrete tasks that you can check off. Then if I'm not going to do that in Animal Crossings, I could do that in, you know, a ton of other places. And, but the ability to have like a task list of things that you know you need to do before you can accomplish something. And they're all very discrete things, like find this much wood, find this much, you know, iron, find this much of this, build these 4 things. In fact, there's a YouTuber, and I'll link to her channel. I love her so much, Emmy Crossing. And she does these great little videos where she'll be like, here's the DIYs that you need. Here's the items you need to purchase. Here's the custom code. And it's literally like, check, 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 check. And Achiever just goes crazy because all the things that it's so discrete. The process is so, but repetitive, but not in a boring way. It's like, it's repetitive in a new and different way, which my ideation and strategic really like a lot, individualization. So I feel like there are ways to meet all of the energy penny needs that you have.
Just strictly speaking to high empathy, high input, where we don't miss anything. If you're number 1 empathy, you know what I'm talking about. I can honestly say that I have never gone to watch a video from a YouTuber that is in any way associated with Animal Crossing and had it be an assault to my empathy. Like these are genuinely good, kind, you know, helpful, concerned about humanity kind of people. And as someone who had been really assaulted by social media in the past, it's just very restorative, because these really are genuinely kind people. And
such a huge part of the significance connectedness piece for me in Animal Crossings is the communities that get built around it.
Yeah.
So like the way, like what Jill was talking about with the positive and the supportive emotions that you feel in the community, but also just that's why we're all playing it. Like we're all playing it because we need something to help us cope with
Well, and
life on whatever level.
and what
right?
I love so much, and I don't, it's the root of all the sharing, like the
Yeah.
codes and stuff for the art.
Yeah.
Like people just share their
Yeah.
stuff.
Yes.
Yes. It feels
And
very collaborative.
I'm always really like super impressed with the way the community tries so hard to still credit the correct creator. Like always, they will share the design and they'll be like, hey, this person designed this and they did such a great job. You know, it's not me, it's not
Go follow
mine.
them.
It's go follow them, you know. And I think that that's so great. I mean, it's such a kindness.
Yeah.
I wish we were all more like that.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think the community is in itself is both very learner centric, which I think helps
yeah.
those of us who are high learner, because it'll always be like there's a next level that you could learn. Like once you figure out how to do custom designing, then it's like, well, but you can apply this custom design to different things that you didn't realize. So people who really like that arranger, strategic adaptability kind of let's move things around and figure out how to do this a little bit better. Like you always have an opportunity to do that and kind of move to the next level.
Right.
And then of course there's like for me, the community piece is also us being able to help other people, which is one of the reasons that I both wanted to do this, for us all to be able to share what we've gone through and how it's helped us to be able to cope with things. And hopefully that will help other people. And also, every time I get an email from someone or a message from someone who's been to my dream address and has had a good time and has learned something or picked something up or got more interested in Animal Crossings or made energy pennies, that makes me feel like, thank God my burnout didn't have to just suck. Like, thank God that it was able to help other people, or that other people get something out of it. Right. And one of the things we cut out of that video in particular was the discussion of what we're going to do in the future, the three of us together with Animal Crossings. And if you want more information about that, if you would like to either join our community or play with us, there's a Discord channel invite that you'll be able to hit here. If you are not a writer and you're here watching this, just so you know, almost all the stuff at the top of that Discord channel is specifically for writers. And so we are definitely a writing community. We are not an Animal Crossings community, but we would love to hear from you. If you saw this video and are into Animal Crossings, we are definitely going to do more ACNH content at some point, not on this channel, but at some point somewhere else. So if you are watching this and you are wondering what to do next, I want you to specifically do the exercise we talked about at the beginning of the video. I want you to make a list of the things that you have done. I want you to identify for yourselves whether it was a plus or a minus for you, and potentially also do the emojis and identify the drains as much as you can. And this is all about, how do I feel when I'm done? And there is a certain amount of in touchness that you have to have with either your body or your spirit or whatever it is, however you feel where your energy is going. There's a certain amount of in touchness that you have to have. So you may need to have someone that loves you help you to evaluate these things, because usually there's someone around you who can tell you, oh yeah, you're really happy when you do that, or oh, that seems really stressful or whatever. And again, as we've said before in previous strengths videos, stress alone is not an indicator that you shouldn't be doing something, because some of us handle stress in very different ways. And so there's beneficial stress and pressure, and then there's stress that is not beneficial, that is very difficult and we want to not have. And so I would encourage you to have somebody else help you evaluate, someone who's close to you and loves you, so that you can not have to do that in touch with your own energy stuff. If that's not something that you're comfortable with, that's totally fine. But what we're hoping you'll find are the places where the drain is so negligible and the benefit is so high. I don't know if any of you who are high empathy could feel us when we were talking, but it felt like we kind of had this momentum with ourselves of like, we got more and more and more excited as the call went on. And then additionally, when we started talking later on in the interview about some of the things we might do together in Animal Crossing's world in YouTube, we were just so excited. And it felt like just the whole video itself was this energy penny make it rain experience for me, even as much as playing Animal Crossings with them has been. And the cool thing about this is you could substitute almost anything in the world for Animal Crossings, and we would talk about it in the same way if it was a make it rain experience for us, because it's not about ACNH in particular. Although, as we talked about a little bit in the video, it does feel like there's something special about this StoryCorps capacity that Animal Crossings has for writers. And so we're going to do a little bit of a discussion about that in one more future video with Jillian. We're going to talk on this channel about writers who have anxiety and specifically how an activity like Animal Crossings can be beneficial for that. But for right now, I want to say you don't need to have Animal Crossings in order to make this happen. There are so many activities that are possible, and it's going to be different for each one of us. Again, if you're doing the It Depends drinking game, drink again, because it's going to depend for each one of us. And if you have questions, definitely ask them below in the comments. But I'm going to give you a job in the comments also, because we're going to give away a Nintendo Switch on this video. And we're going to post the winner when I do the next video upload, which we're willing to go US or international as long as it complies with whatever legal stuff is going on in your country. So we will definitely check that out. If anybody wins, we'll make sure that it's legal to send you the Switch. And if it is, then we will pay to have it sent there. And if it's not, then we'll draw another name. But it's open US and international. We're willing to mail it wherever it needs to go. And I hope that for you in particular, when you're listening to this, wherever you're at with burnout recovery, wherever you're at with needing to make energy pennies, that even if Animal Crossings is not the thing for you, I hope that this video has helped you, because that, is it a drain or does it make it rain, is a really important question to ask when it comes to major expenditures in our energy penny consumption. And we really have to be conscious, especially the further we get into the pandemic, the more we are tired of everything. And that tiredness creates drains and drains and drains. And we can't do anything about that drain right now other than what we're capable of doing, which for each of us is a very small amount. But we can't do anything about the big drain. And so for right now, we really need to manage as many of the other drains as we can and find as many make it rain activities as humanly possible. And I believe that we can do this together. I really do. So how do you enter the contest? Entering the contest on the 7th of February at noon Mountain Time, we are going to close this contest. So noon Mountain US time, Denver time, on February 6th, February 7th, 2022. And I'll put all this in the show notes as well. We are going to give a Switch away. We will mail it to you. It's open US or international. YouTube is not responsible for this contest. And we'll also put that in the show notes. This is run by the Better Faster Academy. And so if you have questions about it, you can email assistant@betterfasteracademy.com. And we will answer those questions. But for right now, the only entries we're taking are on this YouTube channel. So please comment on this video if you would like to win the Switch, and we will contact you if you win. And what we'll do is we'll @ you if you win, and then we'll give you an email address. But if you're coming back and you see that you won and you see that you got added, you can email assistant@betterfasteracademy.com and we will get your information from you. So comment on this video to win. Here is the question that I want you to answer. When you do an activity that makes you feel just like you're sailing, like your energy is just sailing and nothing is ever touching you. Like just, it's the best feeling ever. What is that for you? What makes it rain energy pennies for you? So I want to know what the answer is. And if it's Animal Crossings, that's awesome. And if it's not, that's awesome. I'm happy, whatever you're making it rain activity is. If you don't know and you want to track for a few days and come back on Thursday and tell us what it was in the last 4 days that made it rain energy pennies for you, that's great. We would love to hear that. So please comment below to when we will give the switch away. Like I said, the comments will close at noon on the 7th, 2022, and only comments that are submitted on this video will count as entries. And yes, you can enter more than once. Replies will count as well. And we're just going to put them all in a spreadsheet and do a random number generator and pick a winner at the end of the next week. So my goal today is to remind you to do the exercise and to remind you to evaluate. And if you want to join us on the Patreon and talk more about energy pennies or about drains and rains or whatever it is that you would like to talk about with us on the Patreon, please do join us. If you're interested in more Animal Crossing's New Horizons content, please do come over to the specific channels on the Discord that we have. At the very bottom of our Discord server is an Animal Crossing's New Horizons section. And we're going to do a lot of talking about ACNH on that section. As you can see, I have a second island behind me. So the first island that I did is the one that you'll see on the author interview that we did. And this island is the one that I'm currently working on. This is my StoryCorps island. And we're going to talk more about StoryCorps in a different video and probably on the Discord and in many other places because we are so excited about the potential for what this could do for writers. And hopefully you enjoyed that in the video. And so if you have a StoryCorps island that you're working on, please do let us know. I would love to hear about that. We are going to hashtag this or channel this with StoryCorps so that if you want to learn more, and it's way beyond January of 2022, that you'll be able to click on that and find more of our content that we're going to make about that. And if you never want to hear about Animal Crossing's New Horizons again, that's okay, because this is still the QuitCast for writers. We're going to talk a little bit about support for burnout recovery. We're going to talk about if you are a writer and you are anxious in a future video as well, where we will mention ACNH, but very little. And then we're going to end the burnout recovery series and move on to our marketing myths series, or move back to our marketing myths series that we paused to work on burnout recovery because Becca was in burnout. Becca's doing significantly better. And thank you so much to everyone who has checked in on me. And honestly, thank you to Nintendo, because I'm not sure that I would have made it through burnout this time without ACNH, given the pandemic and Mikhail and everything that has happened this year. Like, it's just been one hell of a year last year. And thank you to Nintendo and to Animal Crossings. And frankly, thank you to Kato and Lex and Katie and EJ and Emmy and everybody that I watch, Fleur, who are Animal Crossing's New Horizons content makers, who have also gotten my learner and input through the last 6 months. It has just, I cannot thank you enough. All of you who make Animal Crossing's New Horizons content. It has saved my life this year, and I am not exaggerating when I say that. Thank you so much to all of you. And thank you so much to everyone from Becca Nation and from the QuitCast and for everybody who's here. We're so grateful that you were here with us today. I will see you next week on the QuitCast and hopefully in future videos and or on the StoryCorps Islands. And we will talk to you on the next QuitCast. Bye, everybody.